Okay, proceed.
All right, thank you. Also from IPEC, we have Mr. Mtangadura, who's the Director Actuarial, who will be presenting today. We also have Mrs. Ethel Sitole, who's also the Manager AML CFT. And we have Mr. Lloyd Gumbo, who's the Public Relations Manager. I think those are the ones I see on the call. If we have any joining us, we will introduce later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinashe. My name is Tendai Msekwa, Deputy Director, Marketing and Communication for NASA. I'm going to introduce the NASA team. We've got our Acting Director, Investments, Isaac Isaki, who will be presenting today. We've also got other colleagues, Lowindo Dewe, Agatha Dondo, Thierry Katsande, all from marketing. Then from investments, we've got Kalisto Mpofu, Malvin Murombedzi. I don't know, colleagues from NASA, if I've left out anyone. I'm just going by what's on the dashboard here. Silence means everyone has been accounted for. And I see we hopefully will be getting more members joining in. Technology can be a bit of a challenge, but I think we've given people sufficient time to log in. And as we always encourage people, if they can try logging in 15 minutes before, so that at least by the time we hit 9 o'clock, the majority of the people will be in. Right, so today's program is more on the technical side, looking at what is an offer here. We're going to have a presentation on investments and properties from NASA. And then we are going to have a presentation on actuarial and IPEC projects from Mr. Robson Mtangadura, who is the Director, Actuarial and AML/CFT. Right, I think without wasting much time, I'll hand over to Isaac Isaki to present on NASA investments and properties. Over to you, Isaac.
Thank you, Tendai. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, special good morning to our colleagues from IPEC. Thank you for putting up this mentorship program together so that we share what we do as NASA from the investment side, just to also help to unpack some of the myths around NASA's investments. Tendai, just confirm that my screen can be seen.
Yes, it's up.
Okay. Thank you. The structure of my presentation is that I will talk about just a brief on the NASA business model and where investments fit in, why do we invest, where and how we invest, where do we draw our mandate from, and also what are some of the key NASA's investments. I'll also draw much on how do we monitor our investments, focusing mainly on our principles around governance of investing companies, which I think is a very key issue for our colleagues from the journalism industry. So that when companies are doing their AGMs and analyst briefings, is something that they should be on the lookout for. So just an overview of NASA. I'm sure some of you may know, but there's no harm in contextualizing where investments fit in. As NASA, our mandate or our vision is to be world-class provider of social security by 2030, in support of the national vision towards a prosperous and empowered upper middle income society with job opportunities and high quality of citizens by 2030. So as NASA, we do strive as a mission to provide sustainable social security and promote occupational safety and health to all Zimbabweans through responsive schemes. So we found out that within the provision of social security, that is where investments then fit in. NASA is essentially a partially funded defined benefit scheme We collect funds from our members, you included. We invest those funds to generate more assets. And then from those assets, we then pay our members either on retirement or when they get injured. NASA itself was established by NASA Act of 1989, which is Chapter 1701, is a statutory corporate body tasked by the government to provide social security in Zimbabwe. Currently, we do have two schemes, which is the pensions and other benefits scheme, which is more of the long-term pension scheme that most people know of. Its responsibility is to provide employment benefits to members on retirement or when they get mainly on retirement. That's why it's called a pension scheme. The accident prevention workers compensation scheme, this one provides benefits to members when they get injured at work. So both of these schemes, they have got investment assets. So we invest our assets separately, the POP separately, in the accident prevention and workers compensation scheme separately. In the next slide, I'm going to just discuss the NASA business model and where our investments fit in. So as indicated, we are here to provide social security benefits and promote occupational safety and health to our members through responsive schemes. How are we structured? We have got a department which collects revenue from all employees in the country, which is our contributions and collections. This revenue is then put into a pool, which pool we then use to pay out benefits to the POP scheme and also to pay out benefits to the accidents and prevention scheme. The net of this revenue is then invested. The area that is marked red is then put into investments as a way of generating investment returns and also growing those assets to beef up the reserves such that in future we can be able to increase our benefits. The reason why we exist as investments is therefore to invest in excess contributions, in investments which provide real returns. My apologies, so as to grow the reserves of the schemes separately. Next, I'm going to touch on what governs NASA's investments in general, which are where do we draw our terms of reference. The first guiding principle for us when we invest is the NASA Act itself. If you go to Section 28 and Section 29, sorry, it's not 19, Section 28 and Section 29, it provides that NASA should invest in treasury bills and other asset classes that are approved by the minister and minister responsible for finance from time to time. So this is the guiding principle. If you also go to the schedule of powers within the NASA Act, it then gives us powers to invest, buying and selling of investments on stock exchanges and also physical properties. We are also guided by the Public Finance Management Act, specifically Section 48, when it comes to approval of significant transactions. We do have internally investment policy statements and procedure manuals which guide us in terms of how do we execute investment transactions. We also subscribe to international guidelines on investments. Specifically, as NASA, we are part of the International Social Security Associations, and there are guidelines on investments that come from that area. Because we are investing to provide benefits, we do have actuarial valuation guidelines that we subscribe to in terms of our asset allocation, where do we invest, minimum returns that are required. And more importantly, we do subscribe to Public Entities Corporate Governance Act for governance issues. And on that list, there is also the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, which was left out. We also are governed by that act when it comes to our investment procedures. Next, I will just touch on what we look for when we invest and how do we balance out competing interests in our investment philosophy. So as NASA, we have got 4 focus areas when we look at investments. But essentially, our investments try to balance out 2 issues: pensioner interests and national development. Having been established as a social security to promote the welfare of members post-employment, our primary focus for investing is to look after the interests of our pensioners. There we've got 2 focus areas. We are looking at growing the portfolio in real terms and also achieving investment returns. Just like any other parastatal, our investments should also not be in confined, should also promote national interest. Thus, we also have a national impact agenda in our investment philosophy. So here we are looking at impact and also investing on priority government projects. So on the pensioner interests, we are looking at investment that generates substantial sustainable income that cover our benefit obligations. So when you look at investments, we ask ourselves, does that investment provide us with dividends? Does the investment provide us with interest? Does the investment provide a profit when we do invest? So these are the 3 key areas under income that we focus on. We want investment that provide consistent dividends. If not, they should provide interest. If not, there should be profit from those investments. Secondly, we also ask ourselves, does this investment provide a real growth that surpasses inflation, exchange rate movements, and growth in our benefits? I think you will all be aware that our operating environment economically is quite challenging, and we have seen quite some significant inflation, which is now estimated 180%, in exchange rate movements, which have been quite significant since the beginning of the year. So as NASA, our drive is to say, when we invest, does that investment track exchange rate movement such that we at least we preserve the capital investment and at least grow it? So those 2 are looking after the pensioner interest to a substantial extent. And then we also look at investment that provide an impact to the economy, contributing to economic growth. We also understand that as we promote economic growth, we promote new companies, we promote sustainability of current companies, which then promotes contributions coming into NASA. So we also look at investment that create employment, investment that generate electricity, investment that promote the welfare of women and children, investment that also promote agriculture, investment that promotes industrial recovery. It's also part of our investment philosophy. But ultimately, we want our investments to promote the sustainability of NASA schemes. So we want to create an ecosystem where, as NASA, our investee companies benefit from each other, promote growth, and at the same time ensuring that our contributions are increased over time. So your next question may be, so where are we invested and what do we seek as NASA? My next slide then talks about the areas where we are invested as NASA. So we are a significant player on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, where we buy shares on Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Currently, we control around between 8 to 10% of the market capitalization of ZSE. We are a very, very significant stakeholder on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. We are one of the biggest institutional investors with a very wide portfolio of investments, as you will see when I present on my next slide. What are we looking for when we invest on the stock exchange? Principally, it's 2 things. We are looking at companies that provide dividends, consistent dividends, like your Delta, your Econet, your Inscore, your national foods. We are also looking at those second-tier stocks, which may not provide consistent dividend, but which provide growth. So under shares in our investment philosophy, the income and the growth is made from ZSE investments, where we control about 10%. We are also a significant investor on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, which is the USD stock exchange for Zimbabwe, where we hold quite a number of investments there in we have got Padenga, we've got Simbisa, we've got National Foods, we've got Inscore and Sidco International. So some of our investments on Victoria Falls Exchange simply migrated from Zimbabwe Stock Exchange in harmony with the dollarization that has been happening in the economy. So that's it on the listed equities. We also have a number of unlisted equities in our portfolio, which for us the significant target is growing the portfolio. We are also quite a significant player in the property space, where we have got 111 properties, which are spread across a number of investments, your shopping malls. We've got quite a number of land banks. We do have hospitals. We do have hotels, industrial space, and others. Key focus area for our properties is generation of consistent rental income from that portfolio. And as you also know, that portfolio properties, they are quite stable despite changes in the economy, changes in currency. Values for properties do not go up and down like your stocks. So we like properties in that they enable us to have a solid asset base which does not get eroded when economic environment changes. We also like properties in that when we invest in land banks, we are able to service them and then dispose them at a profit, thus contributing to the growth of the portfolio. We do have a number of developments in the pipeline, quite some exciting ones. We've got 2 shopping malls that are coming up. It's a substantial progress has been made. One of them is in Chitumbeza, where it's essentially changing the face of Makoni shopping center. And by end of the year, this shopping mall will have been on stream. We also have another one in Harare, again, which there is substantial progress in that, and we actually expect that shopping mall to come on board before Christmas. We've got 2 shopping malls that are in the pipeline, one in Tare, and again another one in Harare. We also invest in housing projects as part of contributing to reducing the national housing stock, at the same time contributing to profits of the authority. We've got 2 housing projects that are almost complete, delivering 735 and 90 stands, and we've got about 3 that are in the pipeline. We also do deliver our own housing through our National Building Society (NBS), which is 100% owned by NASA. So our housing projects are part of the impact projects and also contributing to national development. We also do have investments in banks, where we do short-term money market placements, and one of our flagship investments through the banks are what we call value-added investments for pensioners. We do have loans that we offer to our pensioners as part of enabling them to invest in economic activity that enhance their income. We started this program about 3 years ago, and to date, about 8,000 pensioners have benefited from concessional loans, where we provide banks with very, very cheap loans, and then they only lend to our pensioners at very affordable rates. In fact, we are now looking to increase the funding for pensioners to at least 2 billion this year. We also do have investments offshore, which are meant to cushion our investments from economic challenges. So, as part of promoting sustainability of our schemes, we have got a target to increase our investments offshore up to about 15% of our portfolio. This is meant to cushion our portfolio from economic challenges that may be happening from time to time. Next, I'm going to touch on what are some of the key investments that we have done as NASA in terms of the actual names. So my next slide just gives a brief on some of our flagship investments. Most of you guys will be aware of Rainbow Tourism Group, which operates the Rainbow Towers. We are the major shareholder in RTG, where we control, it's actually 91.60, apologies, it's not 94, it's 91.60% of RTG, which is one of our flagship investments, which is into tourism. So when you think or travel, please do check into RTG hotels in support of NASA. Their hotels are spread across the country. Here, Rainbow Towers is here in Harare. You've got Bulawayo Rainbow Towers. You've got Azambezi in Victoria Falls and Rainbow Hotel again in Victoria Falls. We are also the largest shareholder in First Mutual, which is the second largest insurer in Zimbabwe, competing after Old Mutual. We are the largest shareholder in FBC. I know some of you would bank with FBC. Then we are also the 100% owner, 100% shareholder in NBS, which was established and started in April 2016, solely to promote our mandate on housing delivery. But now NBS is now focusing on more of universal banking. So if you've got any banking needs, you want to access your mortgages, please do pop by and talk to our NBS team. And then we are also a big shareholder in OK, controlling 20.64%. In fact, we are the second or the third largest shareholder in OKism with 20.66%. CBZ at 18.78%. We are in the top 5 shareholders in CBZ. Again, key attraction in this company is they pay consistent dividends, and if you look at their returns on the stock exchange, they are also solid. We are 11% shareholder in Sidco company. Again, as part of promoting our investments into agriculture. We are also one of the significant shareholders second largest shareholder in Zimri, where we control 20.16%. Again, is Zimri and First Mutual, they are both into insurance. Those Zimri, their key focus now is on development. So these are some of the key investments that we have as NASA, which are listed on stock exchanges, and they help us in terms of generating dividends and also generating growth. From our pensioner side, we are using our investments to also promote the welfare of our pensioners. Like I indicated, we are using these banks to deliver on the value-added pensioners benefit in terms of the concessional loans. We are also using our investments in OK to provide discounts to our pensioners when they go to shop at OK. So that's how we are using the ecosystem to also promote the welfare of our pensioners. Okay, I'm not going to talk much on NBA as I've indicated on it. Just more information on our properties portfolio. These are some of the key properties that we have. The NASA house where we operate from in Social Security Center. These are owned and operated by NASA. We have got a shopping mall in Chipinge. We changed the face of Chipinge, which we constructed a couple of years ago. We do have one of the best rehabilitation centers in Southern Africa, which is the Rehabilitation Center in Bulawayo. We own Celestial Park, which is one of our flagship investments, which is 100% let. We own the Pomona Shopping Center, which is opposite Sam Levy, again, which is fully let. We own the Valentine Park complex in Harare. We do have a shopping complex in Gwanda. We do have some townhouses in Woodlands. So these are some of our flagship properties, but all in all, we have got 111 properties across the country. I'm going to talk more on how as NASA we monitor our investments and specifically delve on our voting pattern when it comes to our investee companies. So how do we monitor our investments? Monitoring investments is quite key for us, as we believe our investments are there to promote the interests of our pensioners. So we do appoint board members to investee companies. We do review financial statements, just like you journalists do. When companies publish their financial statements, you analyze them and see whether they are making profits or there are any challenges there. We also do that to a greater extent as part of monitoring investments. We do attend analyst briefings just to hear out from management what's happening at the companies. We also do company visits and contract management. We also vote at AGMs and EGM. I'm going to delve much on our principles around AGMs and EGM, our voting patterns, and something that we would like the journalist fraternity to promote and report on. It's an area where we think with shareholder activism, companies will be more responsible when it comes to shareholder issues. Companies will promote the welfare of shareholders more than promoting the welfare of executives. So we have developed a number of governing principles around AGMs and EGM and how we will vote. So as NASA, we favor boards that consist of majority non-executive directors, with the majority of those being independent. This is in compliance with the governance principles, the King 4 corporate governance guidelines, and also PECOGO. So generally, when we go to AGMs, we will vote for boards that consist of majority of independent directors in support of this principle. The reason being, independent non-executive directors are presumed to be objective and also more likely to look after the affairs of all shareholders rather than where there are conflict of interest, as you have seen. So we also look at diversity. So we ask ourselves, does this company have diversity in skills, age, backgrounds, skills, experiences, and expertise? And also, is there a range of tenures? We do favor and will vote for boards that reflect the diversity of skills, both in terms of gender, where we all know that there's gender mainstreaming, where we also need to look at balancing between women and men on boards. We also want balance of age, where there is old school and new school, and infusion of different backgrounds. We also favor boards where there is variety of skills. We wouldn't want to vote for a board that is consisted of mainly, say, accountants or lawyers. You would want variety of skills. Then when we look at boards, we also understand that these boards come at a cost, and we believe that the board should be proportional in size to the complexity of the investee companies. So while it's not prescribed in terms of number of board members, we just look at each company in detail and assess whether the number of board members indicated they are proportional to the company. So when you compare companies that are well established, like your Delta, for example, you wouldn't expect them to have the same number of board members with startup companies. Because ideally, Delta being a fully grown company with more operations, it will require a larger board. So when we look at boards, we will vote for size that are proportional to the nature and complexity of the investee companies, and we assess this on a case-by-case basis. Then there's the issue of tenure, where one of the challenges in the past has been the issue of seemingly career directors, where people will sit on boards of companies for 30 years, and they are seemingly part of management of the company. But if you serve on a board for 30 years, essentially you are part of management. So we believe that there should be a healthy turnover of directors on a company, including CEOs, so that we balance the fusion of new experience, new perspective, insights, and continuity. So in line with provisions of the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act, we will not vote for members whose tenures exceed 10 years on a board. This is to ensure that there is a healthy fusion of experience where new people come in, old people go, and yeah, there is that balance of tenures. Then we also believe that for companies to be successful, the board members, they should commit sufficient time and attention to the affairs of each investee company they sit on. To this end, we want the companies to disclose how many other board seats that any board member has. The general guideline there is a board member should not sit on more than three boards, otherwise they will not have enough time to look after the affairs of each company. We also believe that board members are appointed to boards of companies to assist in the performance of the company, and therefore their own performance should be evaluated and they should be held accountable to shareholders. So we only vote for re-election of members who contribute positively to the company, and this will be guided by performance evaluation processes done by the investee companies. Then next area that you also look at is remuneration of companies, including their boards. We believe that companies should adopt remuneration policies and practices that create value for the company, and they should strike a balance between performance of the company and shareholder compensation. So generally, as NASA will not support performance incentives that reward companies more than the shareholders. We believe that a company exists for the benefit of the shareholder. Therefore, we will vote against investee company that in any particular year want to pay more cash in profit to management than they pay dividends to shareholders. Because we believe when it comes to profit share, the profit belongs to the shareholder, and the biggest share should then be for the shareholder. And then the next issue that I want to touch on is on, move on to the next slide. Yes, it's on dividends, again, in line with the compensation policy. So as I discussed, income is one of the four pillars of our investment philosophy, and dividends is one source of that investment income. So we look at dividends as a critical component of investment performance, and we favor companies that provide steady, consistent annual cash dividends to shareholders. And we favor companies with well-established, transparent dividend policies, and where those dividends should not be less than any profit share paid to companies. We've also seen the issue of share option schemes and other long-term incentives coming into play. As NASA, yes, we believe in alignment of interest between investee companies and investee company management and shareholders as critical for success of the company. However, we believe that those performance share option schemes, there should be a balance where they shouldn't be too dilutive, and also there shouldn't be too much compensation for directors at the expense of the shareholders. So generally, we favor or will vote for share option schemes only if they promote performance of the company, and also if they're not too dilutive to the shareholders. Then finally, I will look at our approach to re-election or election of directors on boards, where we consider best practice with respect to appointment of directors, where the directors should be put to vote individually, not en bloc, and non-executive directors should be put to re-election regularly to ensure that we don't have directors who sit on companies for too long periods of time, 30 years, for example. We also believe that the re-election process should be staggered to allow a balance, so that not more than a third of the directors should retire in any particular, in any company. And then lastly, on re-election, we also believe that investee companies should assess the performance of each director, and this should be made public when they are re-elected onto the board. The director should not sit on more than 3 boards, and they should not serve for more than 2 4-year terms, and their re-election should not go beyond a maximum of 8 years. I think these are some of the key principles guiding NASA's investments that I thought I should lay out for you to understand. I think this brings me to the end of my presentation. I will take any questions and contributions. Over to you, Tendai.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Isaac, for a comprehensive presentation loaded, which I'm sure will stimulate a lot of discussion and questions. And we'll do that when we get to the question and answer session after Mr. Mutangadura's presentation. Mr. Mutangadura from IPEC, who is the Director of Actuarial Services, he is going to speak on actuarial and IPEC projects. Mr. Mutangadura, if you can load up your presentation, and you can then take over from now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for the slot. Let me try to share my presentation. May you please confirm that you can all see my presentation?
Confirmed, it's up.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for attending the session. My assignment this morning is just to take you through actuarial and actuarial project at IPEC. I wish I would have been allowed to cover a bit more information around actuarial, not only considering projects, so that at least we can demystify this war progression for the benefits of our journalists in the session, who are attending the session. So before I move into my presentation, possibly let me just try to help the participants understand what is an actuary. Basically, an actuary is someone who makes financial sense of the future. What do I mean by that? An actuary makes use of data in statistical models to make decisions, future decisions. So basically, we are looking at your past data, current data, and try to project what the future will look like. So traditionally, actuaries used to work in the insurance sector. I think for some of you who may have been following this profession, you'd only know of actuaries as working in the insurance and pensions industry. In insurance industry, basically their primary role was to price your insurance products and make sure that the insurance companies have got adequate reserves to meet the liabilities or the benefits when they fall due, and also participate in terms of advising management on proper risk management. Again, in pensions, basic role of an actuary was then to assist in terms of benefit projections. You are joining a pension fund today, how much should we contribute now so that we can receive a certain benefit at the time of retirement? But over the past few years, we have seen a shift in terms of role of actuaries in the wider financial sector. where actuaries are now working in general insurance. These are your short-term insurance, your short-term insurance companies, and their best primary role again is in terms of your pricing of your short-term insurance. How much should you pay as premium to get a comprehensive cover for your motor insurance or for your house? And again, how much should you put aside now should you receive XY amount of premium, so that if anyone is to incur a loss through an accident, fire, or whatever period, the insurance company must be in a position to meet the benefit. So we have also seen actuaries playing a significant role in the banks, in the mining, and again in the data analytics space. And from these new, or what we call wider fields, I think the basic role of actuaries there is to extend the actuarial skills to those sectors in terms of proper risk analysis. So basically, that is the role of an actuary in a nutshell. Then coming to IPEC. So I think some of you who may be interacting with IPEC, you will see that we have in what we call insurance department and also a life and pensions department. So I think basically these are our core departments that then interacts with our regulated entities. But behind that, we also have other support departments, actuarial department included. And within the regulatory space, our role is then to support the core departments with the dealing with technical issues. So you find most of the projects that we work with or we work on will then be lead to execution and or implementation by the core departments. So that is the structure of actuarial department within the IPEC. So in terms of my presentation, I will speak to IPEC mandate a bit so that at least we can put things into context. Touch on 2009 compensation. I do understand that most of you in the meeting, you have got burning questions to understand where we are and what is it taking us long for us to close this chapter. I'll also speak to 2019 current change or current reforms and the interventions that we had to do, both from a government point of view and from an IPEC point of view. ZICAP, which is our risk-based solvency assessment regime, IFRS 17, mortality tables, and asset separation. So as I present, I'll try to touch on high level and possibly try to flag out specific areas where I think as journalists you might be interested to know more, so that at least we can better communicate and convey the message to other stakeholders. So basically, as IPEC, our mandate is to regulate, supervise, and develop the insurance and pensions industry for the protection of policyholder and pension scheme fund members. So I've highlighted 3 keywords: regulate, supervise, and develop. And as I will be presenting, I'll try to speak to some of these key issues in terms of the projects that we are doing. So in terms of 2009 compensation, I'm speaking to the converted. I assume that a significant number of journalists in the session are aware of the developments around 2009 compensation, but for the benefit of doubt, or for some who may not be privy to this, I'll try to paint a picture in terms of where this whole issue started. So as you are aware that sometime back, the then President of Republic of Zimbabwe, President Mugabe, appointed Justice Smith Commission to look into the conversions of insurance and pensions policies due to 2009 current conversions. And from that investigation, I think several recommendations came out, which were then presented to Cabinet, adopted, and IPEC was mandated to then run with implementation of those recommendations. So at high level, recommendations were revolving around need for a compensation for policyholders and pension fund members who have lost value due to hyperinflation, legislative reforms to make sure that our Insurance Pensions Act and IPEC Act are robust enough to deal with the current realities in our economy, capacitation of the Commission, among other things. So we have made significant strides in terms of legislative reforms. I think some of you may be aware that around September last year, the Pensions and Provident Fund Act was promulgated bill was promulgated into an act, which we are now operationalize and implement. The Insurance Act is still with the Parliament together with the IPEC Act. We hope that those will be addressed soon. Capacitation of the Commission, I think you have seen in terms of the structures that we have created at IPEC so that we are a robust and effective regulator so that we can deal with the issues that we are experiencing in our market and avoid issues around regulatory failures. So, colleagues, we understand that current conversion was done in 2009. And the Justice Smith Commission was appointed around 2017. And now we are in 2023, but we are still talking of compensation. So I'll allow me to possibly quote Abraham Lincoln in terms of one of his greatest statements that he shared. Say, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. So the idea behind this statement is looking at the complexity of the conversion, hyperinflation. We had to spend a bit more time to try and find effective way of realizing the recommendations or converting the recommendations into reality. We wanted to avoid a situation where we rush into this, then few months into implementation, we realized that there were some gaps that would not help us ensure that our policyholders and pension fund members get what they are supposed to get. So we spent a bit more time on the preparation side, and we are happy that we are now at a very advanced level. As of last week, we were making active engagements with the Attorney General's Office and Minister of Finance, just try to make sure that the regulations are in a format that complies with the drafting requirements and also the legal provisions. All of them are spelled out and covered. So yeah, we have done that. And again, just to emphasize to say, this issue is complex and technical. And the moment you then come up with an SI, that SI needs to be read and appreciated by a number of stakeholders who may not necessarily be actuaries. So you need to put it in a way that do not that minimize ambiguity and make it as clear and as simple as possible. So that as journalists, if you are looking at that SI or regulations, and try to see what is happening on the ground, you must be in a position to then make a decision to say whether the industry is complying with that and where are the gaps, and possibly come up with your voice to make sure that the policyholders and pension fund members are protected. So, colleagues, I've talked about engagement with the AG's office. Nevertheless, what we have done with those regulations is we circulated those regulations with the industry to say, colleagues, this is where we are. Once these regulations are gazetted, we expect you to start to implement the compensation process. So it's in your best interest to start to make sure that you put your house in order and make sure that you start to do necessary computations and come up with compensation scheme. And from the engagement that we have been having with the industry, seeking clarifications on some specific areas, it is our belief that the industry is already at an advanced stage in terms of doing all the preliminary work required. And once the regulations are gazetted, we do not expect much delay in terms of implementation. Our target is to make sure that we close this chapter as soon as is possible so that we start to build the required confidence in our market. And I think, as you may be aware, government, as a sign of good gesture, has committed about 175 million towards complementing the pensioners from loss of value due to current changes in 2009. So this is where we are in terms of 2009 compensation. I'll move to 2019 current changes. So as you may be aware that in 2019, there was there were a number of interventions to stabilize our economy and a number of currency reforms, SI 32 of 2019, SI 33 of 2019. And these reforms triggered a rise in the inflation and exchange rate, which resulted in extraordinary revaluation gains for insurance and pensions industry. So what do I mean by extraordinary revaluation gains? So let's take a very simple hypothetical situation where we have got a policyholder, we have got an insurance policy, or what we call without profit life policy with a company A, where you have got a policy of 1,000 US dollars. So because of these currency changes, it automatically means your 1,000 USD sum assured cover was then converted to 100 or 1,000 RTGS sum assured cover. And from a reserving point of view, we are looking at an insurance company which is holding on specific assets to support a liability. So prior to conversion, there are assets that the insurance company holds in terms of shares, in terms of properties, in terms of money market investments that are supporting your 1,000 US dollar cover. Then overnight, we then change that cover to Zim dollar and also pricing of those assets. But immediately you then start to notice the rate depreciating from 1:1 to 1:2.5, which means that your cover of 1,000 will remain the same. But the assets will then start to price in terms of exchange rate, especially the properties. So where you are having a possibly 1,000 asset in the form of property supporting a 1,000 liability converted at 1:1, the following day, the asset will no longer be valued at 1,000 RTGS. It will then be valued at possibly 2,500 if the rate is 2.5. And as the rate starts to increase, you will find that the same property will then start to revalue upwards, but the liability will still remain the same. And what would be the implication of that without any intervention? It means over time, we are writing off the liability, but the assets still exist, which would then start to pose questions to say, why is it my policy was written off, but those companies which were providing those assets are still up and running and they still have a lot of properties and assets in their name? So what is it that we did as IPEC? We then come in and issued a guideline on the determination and treatment of revaluation gains. How do you determine as an insurance company, as a pension fund, those revaluation gains? This was done in line with our mandate for protecting policyholders and pension scheme members. And the objective of that guideline was to ensure a fair and equitable treatment of insurance policyholders and pension fund members. And again, to provide standards or principles to be adhered to by the industry in the treatment of revaluation gains, so that at the end of the day, we can then have uniformity and comparability between two insurance companies and two pension funds. Also provide standard methodologies to be used in the determining and allocating of revaluation gains. And again, one of the major findings of the Justice Minister report was during 2009 compensation, there was no guidance from the regulator in terms of how those conversions were supposed to be done, resulting in each company adopting its own approach. And it was very difficult for the market, the policyholders, to then look at the conversion and have comfort that the conversion was done appropriately. So as a proactive measure, as IPEC, immediately after promulgation of SI 32 and 33, we had to come in and provide that necessary guidance. So basically, the guidance was you then need to look at what we call a determination date, which was 31 December 2018, and say, what policies do I have in my book? What are the liabilities of those policies? What are the supporting assets of those policies? And then ring fence them. Then you cross the line into post-conversion. You start now to track the value of those assets and make sure that the liabilities are increasing in line with those assets, so that at the end of the day, no one stakeholder will then benefit from those revaluation gains at the expense of another. So for some of you who may be following this, you hear of sub requirement for sub accounts and stuff, where sub account 1 was basically saying, let's ring fence assets that were bought by old money prior to current change, and make sure that performance of those assets must benefit the policyholders and pension fund members whose contributions were used to purchase those assets. Then I think that was one of the major interventions that we came up with as a result of current change. Our expectation then was we will apply this guidance for possibly 3 to 4 years at most, and we would expect the environment to have stabilized. But what we have noticed now is our environment is still volatile, and we will continue to apply this guidance until we are in a stable environment. And of late, we have also added another sub-account, which is sub-account 3, which speaks to a segregation of USD contributions and premiums. And those USD contributions and premiums are supposed to be invested in USD assets, and upon maturity of the policies are supposed to be paid again in the same currency in which they were contributing, so that we avoid a situation where someone will come in, contribute in US dollar, the money is used to purchase some form of assets, come claim point, you are now started to be paid in a different currency altogether. So all these interventions were meant to protect our policyholders and pension fund members, learning from the experience of yesteryear. Government again came in with providing a 5% mining assets in Kuvimba towards compensation. I think an amount then equivalent to 75 million, which now by valuation of Kuvimba is way above that. And the view of the government was we need to compensate policyholders who then lost value due to currency changes in 2019. And instead of us distributing the whole 75 million at once, why not use the dividend so that at least we can pay a significant number of our pensioners over a reasonable period of time? So we have received the initial 400,000, which is first dividend, and we have distributed it. I think less than 15,000 is outstanding. And we are also expecting the second dividend to come through so that at least we can target the other cohort or the other group of pensioners. We expect that from the future dividend, we must be in a position to at least give a minimum amount to all the pensioners, and then possibly make a decision on how best to continue to cushion our pensioners going forward. What is the result of this intervention? I think what we have seen, overall, there is an improvement in terms of pensions and insurance benefits from what members were then getting just after conversion in 2019 to date. I understand people may ask that the benefit that I was getting possibly in 2015 is now different, but I think, colleagues, it's a reality on the ground. If we are to ask in terms of our salaries that we are getting now, compared to what we were getting in 2015, I think there is a significant difference. But our view as the regulator is if you had used policyholders and pension fund contributions and premium to purchase an asset, those specific pension funds members and policyholders must benefit from those assets. So it's an issue of then tracking to see whether the policyholders and pension fund members are benefiting from the assets that were bought using their money. Whether what they are getting now is in line with the exchange rate or inflation, I think is a conversation again that we may also need to have, a separate conversation that we may need to have, where we then try to dissect in terms of our asset performance vis-a-vis inflation and exchange rate. But from an IPEC point of view, I think we are a bit satisfied in terms of the way the benefits are improving. And we have also put in place robust measures to make sure that policyholders and pension fund members are benefiting from the assets that were bought using their own contributions. Allow me to move to ZICAP. So basically, prior to ZICAP, the insurance industry, from a capital requirement point of view, was relying on SI 95. This was one size fits all, where a flat capital amount was required for all entities in our market. As long as you have got an insurance operating license, you are supposed to hold a flat amount of capital, irrespective of your size and the quality of business. So you are looking at huge entities like Old Mutual and small entities like which insurance company is small, well, like company X, hypothetically speaking. Despite the size of those companies, you then expect those companies to have same amount of capital. And there was no incentive at all to manage the risk. So we had to come up with a ZCAP, which is basically a risk-based capital assessment framework, which requires entities to hold capital that is commensurate with the risk they are undertaking. So we are saying if you have got huge appetite for a specific line of business and your appetite for increasing the size of your portfolio, you then need to make sure that you have adequate capital to support that. So the more business you write, the more capital that you need to hold. The poorer the quality of risk that you take, the more capital that you need to have on your book. So what am I saying here? I'm saying for you to hold this minimum capital as an insurance entity, you need to make sure that your quality of business is good, so that you don't need to hold unnecessarily extra capital. So our view is this is a good incentive, as it helps in terms of putting in place robust systems and processes from an insurance point of view to manage the risk. The moment you then start to have a conversation around the amount of capital being affected by the risk, you would also need to understand what sort of risk am I taking on board? How best can I take quality risk so that I minimize the amount of capital? And we have seen this conversation among players when a proper thinking process is putting in place to make sure that quality risks are taken on board as a way of minimizing capital. So basically, ZCAP use what we call a 3-pillar approach. The first pillar looks at your technical issues. How do you determine the liability of insurance company? How do you value the assets of insurance company so that there is consistency across all players in the market? Pillar 2 looks at supervisory reviews, issues around governance of insurance company. Because our view is looking at reserves only, you may not have a view on how the policyholders' funds are being managed. You also need to understand the governance. I think Isaac has spoken to a lot around issues of governance in the boards and insurance company. I think it's one of the key indicators that will help us to give comfort to say fiduciary duties. The board and management are executing their fiduciary duties well. Then the other issue is around reporting and disclosure requirement, which is another pillar. So historically, we used to get an actuarial report submitted to the regulator and possibly an actuarial certificate being put as part of the financial reports, where you then see in the audited financial statement, there's one pager which says, to the best of my ability, insurance company XY have got enough assets to meet its liability and the excess capital of XY amount, and then that is that. But with the ZCAP, we are saying, no, your customers need to know more about the form of business that you are running, how you are managing those risks, and any risk exposure that they are facing by dealing with you. So ZCAP is very prescriptive in terms of level of disclosure on the reports that are supposed to be submitted to IPEC and also submitted to customers. So if an entity fails to comply with a specific regulatory requirement, would expect that to be disclosed as part of the report that would then be shared with policyholders to say, you know what, I'm managing your assets on your behalf, but I'm not complying with regulatory requirements, and as such, I've paid XY amount as penalties for not compliant. So that as a customer, you then need to evaluate and see whether you are dealing with the right company. So those are some of the issues that we then find as we embed ZCAP going forward. Then another requirement is around your own risk solving assessment. As you are aware that valuations are looking at events on a specific day and time, just like your balance sheet. But we are saying an insurance company exists in perpetuity. So management are in a better position to evaluate and understand implication of decisions made to date and potential decisions that they may make tomorrow post-evaluation. So if you know that there's a transaction that you are going to do tomorrow post-evaluation date, or you are going to launch a product that may significantly alter the amount of capital or the risk exposure of an institution, it is your responsibility as an end insurance entity to make sure that you also disclose those to the regulator, so that as the regulator, we may be able that this insurance company is solvent now as a 31 December, but as at 1 January or as at 10 January, once they introduce this product, they may compromise their capital requirement. And what is it that management are going to do to make sure that they correct those, so that at least we avoid a situation like what happens in the audit field, where you have an institution that have got clean audit, but the following year you heard that company have got irregularities and all those issues and stuff. So those are some of the initiatives that we are putting in place as part of ZCAP to make sure that we better protect our industry. And another interesting thing that will also come as part of ZCAP is introduction of ladder of supervisory intervention. What we have done as part of ZCAP is to say, we don't wait for a company to reach a certain critical position for the regulator to intervene and close shop or protect policyholders. We have what we call ladder of intervention. Should you fail to reach your capital by XY amount, we will ask you to provide a remedial plan to us. If the shortfall increased to this amount, we will ask you to stop to writing your business. If the capital again fall to a specific amount, we can then ask you to possibly place your business under judicial management so that we protect the interests of our policyholders. And the extreme end is then when we withdraw the license. Our view is it's better for us to come in early and make sure that we protect policyholders than to wait for withdrawal of license when policyholders have already lost value. And again, ZCAP is aligned with what is happening in the market in terms of international best practice. We have tailor-made ours to suit our local environment, and you can talk of Solvents 2 in Europe, and you can also talk of SAME in South Africa, and in Zimbabwe, you can proudly talk of ZCAP. We have made amendments. We did not just pick Solvents 2 and try to impose it in Zimbabwe. We have made a number of amendments so that it suits to our local environment. IFRS 17, I think this one is quite topical for some of you who may be following insurance reporting standards. So previously, before IFRS 17, the insurance entities were supposed to report their financials using IFRS 4. Basically, IFRS 4 gave sole responsibility for determination of insurance liabilities to actuaries and just communicate the same to the finance team for reporting. And the challenge of this was, depending on how individual actuaries were risk averse, you would find that the practice was not so consistent. So actually, A may think it's too early for us to allow a release of profit from this product. So I'd rather possibly keep a higher reserve and release it as time goes on. Then actually B would say, you know what, from experience, there's no need for us to keep a huge reserve on this product, same product. So I would allow possibly for immediate release of reserves. So if we then look at the decision made by two actuaries, we then see that there may be not inconsistent, but variability in terms of their thinking and the way they look at things. So IFRS 17 is now coming in and require a great deal of collaboration between actuaries, accountants, finance, risk management, compliance, administrator, among others. And the idea behind this is how profit is released or is determined for an insurance company must be something that is owned by all members in an insurance company, not by only one profession. So basically, we see standardization in terms of rate at which profit is recognized over the term of the contract. I think the standard is so clear in terms of how you recognize profits over the contract lifetime. And again, how you allow for risks in assumption. I think the issue that I was talking about in terms of whether an individual is prudent or is aggressive. So this will also be addressed. So at the end of the day, you will find that IFRS 17 is now helping us in terms of uniformity of the financial statement that we see for different companies, comparability, consistency, and transparency reporting. So it will also, I think for some of you who may be following the financial statements of insurance companies, you will find possibly the insurance companies experience what we call an underwriting loss. But after other activities, you then immediately find an insurance company is posting a significant profits. So if you do not look at it closely, you may have confidence that overall the company is making profit, but where is the source of profit? IFRS 17 will then help you to understand that from your core activity, which is insurance and pensions, how much are you making as profit? From investments, how much are you making as profits? How sustainable is your investment profits vis-a-vis your core insurance activity? So that you can then evaluate whether the company is really making profits from its core business or from other activities. The effective date of IFRS 17 is 1 January 2023. What are the challenges? I think some entities are still behind in terms of complying with this standard. And from our assessment as IPEC, we have seen a relationship between those companies which are struggling to comply with this standard and the time at which the entity started to implement the standard. So we are working with those entities to make sure that they comply come 31 December 2023, where we expect a IFRS 17 compliant financial statements. And again, our role as IPEC in this is to make sure that we support our regulated entities to comply with this, but ownership of all reporting standards in Zimbabwe are owned by PAAP. So what are the areas of focus as journalists? I understand this may sound as technical, say that you may just understand what are the challenges, whether the industry is compliant or not. But some of you may be interested in terms of analyzing the financial statements for specific entities come 31 January 2023. And it is in your best interest to spend a bit more time to understand the different lines and their implications on different stakeholders. What does this financial statements mean from a various stakeholder point of view? The investors, the customers, because if you look at the moment, the focus is possibly on complying with the standard, make sure that we have got the right number, the correct numbers. But once you do that, someone needs to make a decision by looking at those financial statements. And is that person aware of what decisions to make from those numbers? I think those are some of the areas that we may need to spend a bit more time on. Mortality tables, I think this one is quite topical. You've been following discussions in our market. I will not spend much time on this so that I can manage my time. I see I'm now off time. So I think basically, historically, we're relying on foreign mortality tables, adjust them to suit our local experience. But again, the challenge was the adjustment may not be accurate, so that at least we can reflect the actual experience in Zimbabwe. So we have done our own project with the support of the industry, where we developed our own mortality tables, and we are happy that we have launched those mortality tables. And where we are now at the moment is what we call quantitative impact assessment. So we have requested the industry to use mortality table and check the impact of those mortality table from their pricing and reserving to see whether what they were using resulted in higher price than expected or a lower price than expected, again in terms of reserves, so that we can then provide necessary guidance in terms of adoption going forward. I will not speak more to this. I understand you have access to these slides. Then the last bit of my presentation speaks to asset separation. Basically, this is a requirement of the Act, Insurance Act, Section 29 and Section 32 of the Pension and Provident Fund Act, which requires separation of assets between policyholders and shareholders, again between insurance and pensions, and again between various funds. This is basically in line with the best practice to ensure that there is adequate transparency in terms of managing affairs of an insurance company, so that we avoid a situation where shareholders will unnecessarily benefit from policyholders' funds or vice versa, or where insurance policies will benefit from pension funds or vice versa. So we have assessed the whole industry in terms of compliance with this act, and we've noted a few entities which were non-compliant, and they've submitted their compliance plan, which we are monitoring to ensure that they comply. I think there's only one entity that failed to satisfy us in terms of this. We have instituted a forensic investigation. That forensic investigation is done, and remedial actions are being taken in line with our governance process. For confidentiality reason, I may not be in position to disclose the name of the entity. Going forward, we will continue to monitor and enforce compliance with this provision so that we ensure that policyholders and insurance funds are adequately protected. I think that's it from me. Moderator, thank you very much. I'll pause for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robson. I know you're concerned about time, but we are well within time. It's 21 past 10. Our question and answer session was slotted for 10:30, but hey, thanks for both you and Isaac for making your presentation within the allotted time. That gives us a bit more time for discussions, for question and answer. And as I said earlier in the chat box, that people are free to post their questions in the chat box, and they are also free to ask verbally. If you want to ask a question, you raise your hand like what Alois has done. But I'm going to start. There are two questions in the chat box, and then I'll then move to Alois. The first two questions, they are for NASA. This is Tawanda Msarurwa. There is a simple principle which says, look after your customers well and profit is guaranteed. What is your view on this against your primary drive to ensure shareholder returns? Would this not result in customer service compromise as management will aim to deliver required shareholder returns? That's the first question, Isaac. And the next one from Prosper Ndlovu. We see NASA investing in 3 banks with significant ownership. Is this not a case of same capital competing against each other? Gains from Bank A will be neutralized by losses in Bank B. Isaac, if you can respond to that before we proceed to the verbal questions.
Okay, thanks Tendai, thanks Sarurwa and Prosper for your questions. I'll tackle the one on customers first. Yes, generally is NASA. Yes, we believe in the statement that every company should look after its customers well, which then results in increase in revenue, repeat orders, and then profits will then come. So we do not necessarily control the business models of the investee companies that we invest in, though what we do is just monitor to ensure that they are delivering on their promise and they are making profits. So from my presentation, I was saying when a company makes profit, we are concerned about how that profit is then distributed between the shareholders and the company executives. That's why I was now saying when a company has excited its customers, made its revenue and made profit, when it comes to profit, that profit is principally the return to the shareholder and how it's then shared. Our principle is the shareholder should then get the biggest take of that profit, with a balance between your profit share to management and dividends paid to shareholders, obviously within the capital requirements of the company. We understand dividends are discretionary, but we want profits coming to shareholders to be reasonable in light of any profit share that will be happening. And then on the second question around banks, so one of the principles that that NASA lives by, and which is universal across every investment professional, is the principle of diversification. We believe our portfolio should be diversified across different asset classes. That's why you see we've got properties, we've got equities, we've got offshore investments, we have got investments in banks. the idea is if one sector is not doing well, the other sector will do well, so that there is a balance. So when you are investing within each sector, the banking sector, for example, yes, we understand that we shouldn't have too many investments within the banking sector, but they should also be diversified. So at one point we had investment in 5 banks, which we have now narrowed down to 3. We believe these 3 are solid, which each focusing on its own unique market. CBZ is the largest bank in the country, well capitalized, doesn't have any need for any capital from shareholders. So from NASA's point of view, there is no capital is not necessarily competing against the other because the CBZ is well capitalized. In fact, for a long time, CBZ has not required has not required or raised any capital to raise issue from shareholders. The same issue with FBC. It's a well capitalized commercial bank, very profitable, paying solid dividends. NBS, which is the new investment on the block, which we put in specifically to assist us within the housing space, which FBC and CBZ were not necessarily helping us. So these banks, they are not necessarily competing against each other. They are all capitalized well, and we believe they offer good diversification to protect NASA's investments within the banking sector space. We did the same in the insurance space, where from 4 companies, we now have 2, ZHL and First Mutual, and we believe it's a good diversification principle. Today,
Thank you.
I think I answered. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. And I'm going to move to in this order: Alois, Philemon, and then Mtandazo. I'll take those 3, and then if there are any more, we'll take later. So those 3, if you can go in that order. Alois, if you can ask your question, please. I think you need to unmute your mic, Alois, if it's not. Okay, we seem to be having problems with Alois. Maybe you may want to resort to typing in the chat box. Philemon?
Oh.
Okay, Alois is on. Yes, you can ask.
So, yeah, thank you so much, moderator. Yeah, I've got a question for the gentleman from IPEC. You touched on a very interesting story on the 2009 compensation. And the questions that I have is that, going through that heartbreaking report, the Justice Leslie Smith Commission of Inquiry into Pensions, you'd realize that there were observations that quite a sizable number of insurance companies did not submit their financial statements to prove whether they had not been making profits during the hyperinflationary era. You'd also establish that we are talking about 2008. I know you have touched on some of those issues where you were trying to say that some of the issues are being looked into. But now, the time also that has been taken, yes, you have spoken about that. What I would now want to hear from you as IPEC is, why does it have to take so long? 2017 up to now, we are still working on modalities. Secondly, what I also would like to appreciate is, what have you done as the regulators to bring to account those companies, insurance firms, which were accused of not having complied with the demands by the commission to submit their financial statements so as to prove whether they were not making any profits during the time? What have you done about that? And are there any timelines? Because I'm sure there really is need for timelines. These companies made huge profits, and some feel that the companies are simply shortchanging the pensioners, and all this affecting the entire idea of investing into pensions and insurance into companies, which you had also partly touched on. But what have you done as the regulator, especially to deal with the companies which were non-compliant? Because I'm sure there are signs of dishonesty also on the part of these insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Alois. Philemon?
Thank you so much, Tendai. My question is to NASA Director Investments, Mr. Isaac Isaki. We have seen NASA investing in a number of shopping malls across the country. But what we have noticed is that most of these shopping malls have become white elephants with less than 50% occupants. And like he said, NASA is investing more in shopping malls like the one in Chitungwiza, which he said NASA is expecting to complete by before the end of the year. Another one in Harare, another one in Mutare. So my question is, what is NASA doing differently to ensure that pensioners they get good returns from those investments? Thank you. I submit.
Okay, thank you. And I'll take from Tandazo before we let the presenters respond to the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Tendai. My question is also related to NASA. Is on in terms of investment this year. How much are you planning to channel towards investment, like in properties? How much are you planning to invest this year? That's my question. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I will start with IPEC. There were two questions for IPEC and one for NASA. So we'll start with IPEC, and then after done, we'll move on to NASA. And those who've asked if you can lower your hand so that we don't get confused, so that at least I'm able to give others an opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much, Tendai. So I'm not sure if I missed another question for IPEC. I think the one that I took note of was from Alois on what IPEC has done on 2009 compensation, any indicative timelines in terms of how to deal with those issues. So I think that is a very important question, Always. So what we have done from IPEC point of view was to split our interventions into two. So effective 28 February 2009, we then say we have got a lot of legacy issues that happened prior, and we need to come up with holistic and comprehensive interventions to correct all those issues. But at the same time, we can then fold our hands and wait until we resolve those issues to regulate our industry. So we then said, starting from 2009 going forward to date, we then institute a number of measures to make sure that we avoid a repetition of what happened prior to 2009. So how are we dealing with the issues that were identified in the Justice Smith report? So I think the first thing is we wanted to avoid a piecemeal interventions where we then start to say, you did not submit this, that we are not submitting, therefore we are going to penalize for you for this. Then we go to the next stage and say, you did not compute well in terms of the conversion values for this, then we are going to penalize you for that. Then we went to the next thing to say, your expenses were higher than what we were expecting, then we are going to penalize you for this. So the thinking process was, we need to come up with a holistic intervention. And these interventions are then the ones that are supporting or informing the 2009 compensation regulations. So we are looking at all those things. Insurance company A, you were supposed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Demonstrate to us that we have done so. Is there any way where policyholders will prejudice their money by shareholders? If yes, may you please return that money? And we are going to recognize the time value of money. We are not going to say hyperinflation. If it was 1 million RTGS, give us 1 million RTGS. We've also put in place mechanisms to make sure that we convert that money as at that time into a real value, so that that money, if it's now being paid back now, it then allow for time value of money. So that is the approach that we adopted always. And once you possibly have a look at the draft regulations, I think you must at least see that most of the issues that you are raised are going to be addressed as part of those regulations. And once those regulations are gazetted and implemented, we are quite confident that all the issues that were raised in the Justice Ministry report during that period will then be dealt with adequately. And from 2009 going forward, I've spoken to a number of measures that we have put in place so that we avoid a repetition of those issues. In terms of timelines, I think if this issue process was going to be done our own way, I think as IPEC, we are keen to have this chapter closed as soon as yesterday. But again, you need a number of, given the national importance of this project, we then need to have buy-in and support of a number of stakeholders. As I've said, we have drafted the regulations, but we also have an Attorney General's office who then look at a legal implication of those regulations to say, you want to apply these things in retrospect. What does the law say? How can we ensure that we are within the ambits of law and make sure that policyholders are protected? So all those things, all those stakeholders are then supposed to come in. The government is coming in terms of funding. We also need to make sure that the money is readily available. Once we implement this, the regulations are gazetted and implemented, we need to immediately pay our pensioner. So it's an issue of then managing a number of stakeholders at the same time to make sure that the intervention will address all issues at once so that we avoid a situation where we continue to reopen the chapter and try to deal with issues on a piecemeal. I think that is my submission on you, Alois. I'm not sure if I missed another submission because I hear the moderator saying that there are two questions for IPEC.
No, you got it was Alois who asked about IPEC, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Was it Prosper? I think there was a bit of channel noise when you asked your question, so Isaac did not get it properly. So if you may care to repeat the question, the one you were asking about investment, how much, whatever, we didn't get it quite well because there was a bit of interference when you're speaking.
And I should be having from Mtandazo.
From Mtandazo, sorry, Mtandazo.
Yes.
Mtandazo, are you on?
Yes, it's now clear. Hello.
Yes, you can come through.
Yes, I was asking about the total investment that I mean, the amount of investment that you are planning to channel towards property. We are investing into property. So I wanted to find out how much are you going to planning to invest this year.
Thank you very much, Mtandazo. And Isaac, also there's just another question. I might as well read it so that you can respond to all three. This is from Priska. NASA is a significant shareholder on the ZSC. How do you manage the impact of market performance on your income generation, considering that ZSC hasn't been performing well this year for the past 2 months, for the past month or two? Isaac, you can take the questions.
Okay, thank you, Tendai. There's also another one from Skulekan Moyo, which is how is the property sector performing? What is the occupancy rate as of now on the housing scheme? Where are the investments? So I'll just a moment. I'll start with the question from Philemon, which was on shopping malls. It would have been nice if you had identified the particular shopping malls which are indicating it's vacant. But from our end, the shopping mall that we currently own, we are almost at full capacity. So if you look at Gwanda Shopping Mall, we are at 100%. You look at Bindura Shopping Mall, we are at 100%. In fact, we are receiving requests for rental space from tenants where we are even turning down because there is no more space. Valentine Park, we're 100%. Pomona Shopping Mall, which houses the fast food outlet and the other shoppings opposite same level, we're 100%. Chipinge Shopping Mall, we are at 90% with a vacancy rate of 10%, which is natural for a shopping mall of that particular nature. And then there was a question on how we are going to deal with the other shopping malls in terms of vacancies. So our approach is when we start a shopping mall, before we even decide to put a single dollar, during the planning stage, we do what we call pre-leasing. So we look for an anchor tenant who will occupy the biggest space. And now, because we are in partnership with a number of, we are a significant shareholder in a number of big retailers, and we are also in partnership with some other retailers, we look for an anchor tenant. It could be an anchor tenant like OK, like Pick and Pay, Spar, and then they become an anchor tenant and we sign pre-leases. And then our approach is we do not develop until we've got at least 70% of the new space taken. So for these two shopping malls that I referred to, we have anchor tenants, and the space is one of the new shopping spaces is 100% pre-let. Then the other one is at least 60% pre-let, but we don't think there'll be any issue in finding tenants for it. And then there was a question on how is the property sector performing and what is the occupancy rate as of now. So you find that in properties, there are different sectors within the property sector. The sector that is currently experiencing a huge problem are your CBD spaces. Obviously, because tenants are running away from CBD going into suburban areas. Fortunately for NASA, we don't have significant CBD properties. In fact, our CBD properties, few as they are mainly the competition houses, they are occupied. Overall, we are sitting at 72% occupancy rate for our portfolio, which is comparable to the market. Fortunately, most of our properties are suburban and shopping malls outside town. And then there's a question on NASA is a significant stakeholder on ZSE market. How do you manage the impact of market performance on your income generation, considering that ZSE hasn't been performing well for the past 2 months? So when you look at our equity investments, our approach, we are an institutional investor. We look at long-term performance of the market rather than short-term performance. Yes, we are worried about the market fluctuations on the short term, but we don't react to those. So if you look at the stock exchange, yes, the past 2 months have been quite difficult because of exchange movements, but overall, since January, the stock market, when you look at the ZSE All-Share Index, it rose by 516.76% as of February last week. Our own portfolio is NASA, rose by 742%. So we actually outperformed the stock exchange. And if we look at while the exchange had moved by 565%, overall, our listed equities portfolio on the ZSE is retained 26.5% in USD terms, the listed equity only. So the fluctuations, yes, while they affect the capital gains, it does not affect dividends. So like I indicated, we invest on ZSE for both dividends and also for capital gains. So overall, as long as our portfolio is performing better than the exchange rate and also performing better than inflation, which was at 180%, we are good, and we look at the long term. Should a company not be performing well, we always sell it and invest in others. There was a question on the amount of money we are targeting to invest in properties. So some of the projects we are still at planning stage when it comes to issue of the quantum of funding, because we engage experts to do BOQs and all. So I may not have the actual number now. Safe to say that the number of properties that I've indicated in terms of investments are what we are working on. Maybe if you can get in touch with us later on, we can then advise you on the quantum once we have done the final planning. And I don't know if I managed to exhaust all the questions.
Yeah, there's one more from Michael. What is NASA doing to curb non-payment of rentals, as alluded by one presenter in previous sessions? Non-payment, rent defaults.
Okay, thank you. So the issue of collections of rentals is a challenge in the industry. It's inevitable that in a pool with a pool of tenants, which are in excess of 300, you have some who delay in payments. But as NASA, we have put in place strategies where one, we preserve the value of that rentals, and then two, we also do collect on it. Okay, so what have we done in terms of preserving value? I think one of your question is mainly on what do we do if someone doesn't pay today and they want to pay 3 months later when the exchange rate is changed. So we, as is practice in the industry, we levy, if someone defaults, we levy interest on any rental that is outstanding. And that interest is quite significant to motivate people to pay early and also to balance out the issue of the delay in payment. And then we, at the time we bill our rentals, we index them to the exchange rate. But though we bill in local currency, we have got a team within our properties division which does the follow-up on rentals. And should the tenants delay paying rentals for a sustained period of time, there are channels that are there legally to pursue rentals, including going to the lawyers and also evictions. But we want to take those as extreme measures at the tail end when tenants don't default. But generally, we do follow-ups, and the response has been quite favorable.
Thank you very much, Isaac. I don't see any hands up and I don't see any questions in the chat box. So I think you have done justice, both you and Robson. I think which now brings us to the end. And as usual, colleagues, the presentations are going to be shared. And if you've got any further questions, feel free to ask IPEC or NASA directly regarding any other issues that you may need clarification on. We are bang on time. We move on to Tinashe for the most exciting bit, presentation of prize presentation for articles from the third session. Tinashe, if you can take over. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, moderator. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. All right, just before I get into the exciting bit, let me just acknowledge that we are receiving a lot of quality articles from this cohort, which makes us happy as the administrators of the program. The journalists are not simply repeating the presentations, they're asking relevant questions, seeking the right voices to comment and analyze the articles. Well, if it's in a running race, we would say the winner made it by a millisecond. Those who are not mentioned today do not lose heart. Most of the articles are very good. And I bet most of these articles will make it in the annual awards, which are bigger and major at the maybe end of the year and later. For the articles that we received from the third session, as usual, the winners will get 200 USD equivalent, and the runner-up will get 150 USD equivalent. So I'll start with the electronic media category, where we have a runner-up, that is Tanaka Makuaza. Congratulations to you and well done on his news article on NASA pension benefits, which was on Platinum FM. Well done to you. That was the runner-up for the electronic media category. And then we have the winner for this category. It's none other than Rumbidzai Mashayanya for her work on financial inclusion for women, critical for economic development. Well done and congratulations to you. Your prize money will be coming to you. I move on to the print media category, where we have the runner-up, that is Prosper Ndlovu, for his article in the Chronicle, Insurance and Pension Sector, the Missing Link in the Long-Term Infrastructure Financing. Well done and congratulations to you. 150 USD equivalent is coming to you. And the winner in this category is Gibson Maka, also from the Chronicle, on his article, How Agriculture Index-Based Insurance Can Be a Game Changer to the Farming Community. Well done and congratulations to you, gentlemen. I move on to the last category, which is the digital media category. We have the runner-up, James Muonwa, whose work in the newzimbabwe.com. The article, Farmers Show Huge Appetite for Agric Index-Based Insurance. Well done to you, James. And the winner in this category last is Tendai Makaripe from 263 Chart, Artificial Intelligence in the Insurance Sector, Blessing or a Case. Well done to you, gentlemen and lady. Your prize monies will be coming to you. And thank you, moderator. I think that's all from me.
Oh, thank you, Tinashe, and congratulations to our winners. Let's keep pushing, and there's another opportunity from this year, and the final session, the fifth session that is coming up later on this year. And I now call upon Lloyd Gumbo to give us closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies, Tendai Mseekwa, Deputy Director, Marketing from NASA. On behalf of IPEC and NASA, who are the organizers of the Journalist Mentorship Program, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to all of you for joining today's session. I would also like to express our sincere appreciation to our esteemed presenters, Isaac Isaki, NASA Deputy Director, Acting Director, Investments, and Robson Mtangadura, IPEC Actuarial Director, for sharing key insights on investments and actuarial projects, respectively. I believe the interactive and engaging session you conducted today have provided journalists on the program with practical skills and techniques, as well as appreciation. I believe it will enhance their appreciation of insurance and pension matters to inform their writing. Finally, a special mention goes out to all the participants who actively contributed to the discussion, asking some thought-provoking questions. I noted on the chat platform, we had thought-provoking questions which were being asked, which was quite interesting. And last but not least, to the Director of Ceremonies and to the team that was working on organizing the JMP sessions. Thank you very much for all the contributions, and to the other participants or those who joined from IPEC and NASA. Thank you very much for always committing to these sessions and sharing some insights with the journalists on the program. I see Madam Samantha Nende had not been acknowledged earlier. She's our Director, Corporate Services. She's also on the call. And everyone else who may not have been acknowledged earlier, thank you very much for participating in today's session. So that brings us to the end of today's session. We look forward to more informative articles that will help enhance the public's understanding of insurance and pensions, as well as demystifying some of the probably thoughts that we had about insurance and pensions, and also particularly on the NASA side from the presentation that was done by Isaac. It was quite interesting, particularly on the investments that they have made and where they are invested. I'm sure some of the participants were surprised to note that NASA is invested in some of the organizations that they probably didn't know. So thank you very much. I wish you all a restful holiday next week, as well as interesting elections. See you again in the next session next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.